Let's start by telling the good people who you are. We can start with Dennis, since you're outnumbered on stage. Tell us who you are and what you do at Bunk.
Yes, I'm Dennis Muragori. I lead the Digital Life department at Bunk. I usually joke around, if it has cables and cords, it's usually my problem. Yeah.
And we have many of those cables and cords.
Hi, my name is Maureen Mumbua. I run the archives department for Bunk. And what that means is I mostly do digitization work for the archives that are held at Macmillan Memorial Library. The beautiful exhibition that you see on my right, that's part of the work that we do. So a lot of work in storytelling from the archives at Macmillan.
Thank you. And Maureen, I keep telling the team at Bunk that at different seasons of the year, I envy their jobs. I envy every time of the year because she gets to spend time in the basement and she spends time trying to derive stories out of the basement of the Macmillan. So what was, for both of you, your first interaction with a library? Maureen, you can go first.
I think for anybody who's been through the Kenyan education system, you know at the beginning of every term, the kids receive a requirements list that your parents are supposed to provide for you when you go back to school. And that's as early as nursery, essentially. And one of the things that's always on there for the Kenyan education system is you bring a storybook. So those storybooks, every child brings a different storybook, and those storybooks form a class library in essence. So as early as, I would say, nursery school would have different books brought in by the students themselves, and then would have a lesson just reading through that. So it was some type of library setting, not really the building, but classroom setting of a library. Then in high school, that's where I also got to see how a library can be multifaceted. So our library in school was not only a library, would sneak in there, illegally listen to the radio, and that's how this space makes sense to me. It's not only a library for the books, but it can host things such as festivals. So that's kind of been my interactions with libraries from the onset.
Did you do 844?
Yeah, 844.
Your 844, guys, your schools had libraries like that? Yeah, Mel is like, us guys didn't have cookbook like class. That's such a brilliant way to stock a class library.
Also public schools at the time were really on it.
Yes, they were. Because the public school I went to was on it, but I think the books came from elsewhere. They're definitely not from the students. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that generous sharing. What about you, Dennis? First library interaction?
For me, I can say my first library interaction was still the same as Maureen's experience in primary school. Where you have you're in primary, you're very young, you don't know much, you're trying to read. So you're mostly looking at the colorful books and the photos and the pictures and all that, yeah. But now this first 2 years interaction was now in high school. It was a library in a sense. There were a lot of books. So when there's a new person who's coming to secondary school, they used to bring a new book, and it's the same. So it fills up the library. But you'll find that the books which were there, reading was kind of not forced, but kind of serious. So it wasn't really a fun library where you go pick up a book, you go sit down next to a tree and read. No. So when it was that lesson, maybe for that topic to read, so you just pick a book, then go and read it. After that, you return the book. So in high school, it was a completely different experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's take it to the field. You guys both went to the coastal region as part of your field work. Could you share a bit about what it was like on the road, the fieldwork experience, the libraries you visited, what stood out? Just give us a journey of your LER experience.
First of all, shout out to the team at Bunk. The logistics that it took to cover all 47 counties in Kenya. That's literally every corner in Kenya. So shout out to that. Something that stood out to me and was just, you talked about the Kenya National Library Service. I was thinking about, just shout out to the people who thought to enact the law that brought that service to being, essentially, all the way back in 1965. The things that the Kenya National Library Services has done for the library ecosystem in Kenya has been wonderful. So that stood out to me a lot. A lot of counties have a lot of libraries that were initially part of the Kenya National Library Services. They were almost in every single county that we went to. So that stood out a great deal. Other than that, I would say the community libraries were really special to visit. And most of those that I visited were in this part of Nairobi, which Shiro had said earlier might be considered the underserved part of Nairobi. So for example, in a library that's not too far from here, just behind here, the whole library, it's a container. And they've repurposed that into a library. And the community themselves stock the library. It was very special to visit that library. It was very reminiscent of what Book Bunk is trying and is pulling off here. So very special to visit those libraries, the community ones. There was someone's home who they turned into a library in Komarok, not too far from here as well. So very special to see people just giving up their own personal spaces for the love of books. Yeah.
I really enjoy hearing our team talk about this work because I'm just like, they're so passionate. I'm like, that's what I sound like when I talk about the work. It's really wonderful to hear these stories. And I want to also you pointed out an important point about Panellists and its foundation. One of my favorite aspects of this report is a timeline of the history of Kenya, of Kenya's libraries from 1902 to date. The oldest library at the coast, which is the Salim bin Saif Library, was built in 1902, and it's unfortunately not in its original building today. So technically, Macmillan is the oldest library in its original building, but there's just such a wealth of history about the way that we've made decisions around library, and there's a beautiful map on the report. So please go to the website and download it and check that out. It's gonna be really insightful. Okay, over to you. Same question.
Yes, so I had the opportunity to visit Kilifi. So apart from the white sandy beaches, they have a lot of libraries over there. Some of the libraries which stood out was Jitsoni. So it's like a community library. You'll find that almost like 60% of I think 60% of the traffic, they're not coming to read books. They're just coming for the programs which are there, which was really mind-opening. So it changed even the perspective on how libraries can operate. So there's a lot which can be done, like for the communities around. You'll find even some had like feeding programs for the kids. There are some which were integrated even like within the schools. Another one which also stood out was Panellists one, which started as a community library, but expanded now. It has, they are doing a lot in that. They have a lot of programs, even they're trying even to reach out even in the communities further. And in terms of visual, I can say there's one which was Pwani University. I love nature. So just going into the library and you see like it's all natural light. Like the ceiling, they have a huge ceiling which brings a lot of like skylights. That was really good. Yeah. So apart from it serving like the university students, they still had a couple of things where they're able to bring like the communities around. Yeah. So it was amazing just to see libraries function in other aspects apart from just people coming and read books. The community around, they feel like they have safe spaces where they can come. Kids can be fed. They can have like there's some were even having like weddings in the libraries. So yeah, so it's amazing to see how these spaces can open up and just bring everybody in. Yeah.
You said weddings. That's what I envision happening on these grounds. When we're not having festivals here, I'm like, weddings. We're gonna start renting out this place for weddings, but don't tell anyone. Did the field work and spending time looking at Kenya through its libraries, did it change your view of Kenya or your perception of your country? And I'll start with you, Dennis.
It definitely did, especially now visiting like Kilifi County. I've never been there before. Just seeing how the different communities interact with the spaces around them, it was really like mind-opening. There's one, I think it's the Zitoni one. At first, when we went, there weren't a lot of people inside, so it was a bit empty. But they had like a kid space like on a corner, and they usually tell us like it's usually full. So that time we went, I think the kids were in school, so that's why like the spaces it wasn't being used. But just seeing how impactful those spaces can be, where like a mother can go out and maybe do shopping and all errands and leave the kids at the library just to read, and they know like they're in a safe space. Yeah, I think some other places maybe might take that for granted, but just seeing how they operate those spaces, yeah, it was really mind-opening.
And for me, I think when we embarked on the research project, I'd been working at Bunk for a couple of years. So I'd already been around the world of books. We'd already begun interrogating what you said before about, oh, Kenyans don't like reading, blah, 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 and also trying to prove that as false. So being on the road to look at all the libraries in the country, what it did to me, it just reaffirmed the belief that we already knew as Book Bank, as the people, as the workers in the libraries. It was really just reaffirmation for me that it was incredible just to see book lovers everywhere that you went, and people who truly believed in what we already knew before we started, that libraries hold a specific and very important part of our community's future. So very reaffirming, very, very, very reaffirming. And it was incredible to also see kind of the same challenges that the libraries face. A lot of them, almost all of them, were very eager to bring in more African authors into the libraries. So, and those were discussions we already kind of knew, but we just confirmed it with the data that all of them said they would like to see more African books. They would like to see themselves represented in the collections as well. And even though the buildings themselves structurally might be failing them, they're still full of people. Children go to libraries all the time. So it was just reaffirming that, and yeah, now we have the data to prove it, that it's true.
Yes, that Kenyans read. Stop saying that thing. It drives me crazy. Kenyans don't read. I'm just like, who told you? Show me the data. So now we have the data. And if you say that, I want to slap you in the face with my data. And you're probably wondering why we didn't hire like a research firm or a big research company to do this work. We every single member of the Book Bank team, apart from Ashuka and I, perhaps, went onto the field because these are the guys interacting with the users here every single day. They're the ones planning the programs and thinking about the tech and thinking about the archive. And they all came back different. Like we literally shut down the organization and had people go to the field, and they came back with such an energy because they'd seen new ways to skin this cat. They'd seen ways, and they'd shared new ways with other people how to kind of do what they did. And that's why it was important to us to train our team, give our team the kind of research skills they needed to go into the field. It would have taken us a lot shorter to hire a company, but I think sometimes it's important when the person who's gonna apply the research is the one who collects it, because we had a set of questions for all of you when you were going out, but the responses, the transcripts that came back were so much richer because Maureen knew exactly what to ask about archival collections, about doing about cataloging books, because you've all done a lot more than what you're doing now at Book Bank. You began as catalogers of the collection, right? So as we close, and I'll be coming to the audience shortly for questions. Yep. As we close, I want to highlight my favorite library. I didn't go to it, but I read about it, and I'm gonna go to it. But it was the Eliud Kipchoge Library, which was a library that was bestowed to him when he won one of the marathons. I'm not sure which one. Which one was it? I don't know, one of them. So that love of running and of reading, that the government chose to gift him a library that cost almost 100 million to build is really beautiful. For the beginning of like the first couple of months of that library, it was definitely a white elephant, like in the middle of Iten, just like sitting this grand building in the countryside. But the way that the community has kind of began to embrace it, because they didn't know what to do with it. They're like, it's so shiny, will we break it? But eventually they're like, okay, it has some cool books. Okay, we can come and learn about what it takes to actually build a muscle to run. And it's really, it's a kind of project that may not have been as well thought out in terms of public engagement and participation, but the outcome has been really special. And I also want to mention that this research doesn't end here. Two of the people the person who began this research and finished it, Siokao Mutonga started this research in 2020, and Trevas Matathia finished it in 2024, and they're both not with us now in the country or at Book Bunk because they're out expanding this research in their academic pursuits. So as we speak, Trevas is trying to apply a global lens to this research. Siokao has already done that, and that is again the power of using your team who are already invested in the work, kind of doing the research, because then it can grow beyond its original scope. And we can't wait to see what both of those incredible human beings churn out as part of this process. So shout out to both of them in absentia. I hope you're watching because we are live streaming. So Siokao and Trevas, if you're watching, thank you for starting and finishing this important work. And thank you both and the rest of the team for just delivering it. I want to ask you one last question in closing before we come to the audience. If you had 20 million shillings today, you can't spend it on a book bank library because that's not fair. What would you spend it on? Which library would you spend it on? And what specifically would you pay for? 20 million shillings. That's about how many dollars is that? 200,000? About 200,000.
I think I'm biased. I'll go to tech. One thing I noticed, like when I was just going through the libraries in all, like most of the communities, you'll find like some had like computers, maybe they were donated, but they don't have internet. Yeah. So I'd say internet. Yeah.
Very predictable. Okay, internet really disappoints Dennis. Okay, great answer. Great answer.
Just change just one thing. There's a library within anybody who's been to the coast for Jesus complex. It's a whole complex. So in that complex, there's a library called Fort Jesus Museum Library. It's right next to a museum, and at the door, like 10 steps from the library's door, it's carpentry work, beautiful Swahili architecture doors. Woodwork is happening 10 feet away, like 10 footsteps from the doors of the library. So that's the one I would go to change. It's incredible. It reminds me a lot of Macmillan original wood floors. The backdrop is the ocean, Indian Ocean. They have a first floor, which offers incredible views of the ocean. So I would go there. It's not too big, so the first thing I would do. Okay, no, you said just one thing.
No, you obviously you have a plan. Let's hear your plan.
I thought it through. I have a plan. So the first thing I would do is do a little bit of like just touch up, just small. The bones are good, but I would just do a little bit of touch up, clean it up a little bit and whatnot. But more importantly, majority of that money would go into stocking, and I already know what I would stock the collections with. Anybody who's been, again, through the Kenyan education system, for example, when you take English, Kiswahili, there's required reading, set books, right? Kifo Kisimani, the river between, and that's like language most of us can understand. I would go back in time, look for all the set books that have existed in time since it started, and I would stock that library there. Because it's like an area of commonality for majority of Kenyans. So that would be our unique selling point if I was to change that library.
Somebody send this babe to Lamu to change that library. That's a great answer. And I know that library very well. And it's a reason when I go to Lamu, I don't go to Lamu town because I feel like I want to adopt it and like add it to the Book Bank network. And we have enough work already, but yes, it's stunning. And if you ever visit the coast and go to Lamu, please check it out. Okay, let's turn to the audience for some questions. What do you want to know about your libraries, Kenya? There's one on the third row.
Hi. My name is Kathleen. Thank you so much for the presentation. I've enjoyed it and learned a lot. I'm curious, what other programs have you seen running at libraries? I'd love to know what's happening, just across the country.
One thing that I noted, you'll find apart from general meetings, some of the libraries acted as dispute centers, where when neighbors had a disagreement, so that's where they meet to solve their issues. Yeah, so I think I can say that's one of the things that I saw like they were doing in the libraries.
And I would say it's just the ingenuity of the libraries and such an entrepreneurial spirit in the libraries as well. We visited different libraries, but also one of the ones I visited was using the space as hiring it out for wedding, as he said before. So it just it goes to speak to just the type of thinking, and the libraries are trying to raise money for themselves basically. So they're doing a lot of things such as like just using it as a public space, because that's not very prevalent in Kenya. Just public spaces where people can meet and convene and commune together. So they use a lot of the spaces for such things.
I'll also highlight one in Kirinyaga that had horse riding, which I thought was wonderful. Remember, I think Travis went to that one and he's just like, you have to go. And that was one that stood out for just how innovative they were around the way they resourced their library. Yes, Mel.
About two aspects around the people in the community-run libraries. Who's running them? And then who's participating, who's attending, in the spaces. So for example, is it chamas, is it youth groups, etc.?
I would say the people, for speaking to the people who are running the libraries, honestly, I think for most of them, it started as an individual's idea. And then it kind of grew into the community. So more people bought into the idea. So maybe the originator of the idea is the one who's running the library. And the people who are attending to the library are now the immediate surroundings of a lot of the community libraries. Yeah.
Youth, women,
children. A lot. Children. A lot of children go to libraries. They're very interested. Children are a big demographic for the libraries. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes up to 3,000. The library that had 3,000 kids in one day. They're for sure the largest demographic across all the libraries we went to. And yeah, that's completely right. You would find that like an individual will set up a library and then they can't maintain it because maybe, you know how you'd go to Shags and set up a library there, and then just the neighbor will be like, okay, I'll just maintain it. And that's such a special thing about Kenyans. I don't know if it's happening anywhere, but I think it was really special to see it happening here. Okay, we have 3 minutes. I have one job today, and it's to end this panel on time. We'll take 2 more questions. There's one at the back, then we'll come to Mo.
I'm curious thank you, first of all. I'm curious if there's a culture of loaning out the books at the libraries, or are they primarily to be experienced on site? And if there is loans, I imagine it's probably not particularly digitized, but what does that look like?
Lending libraries.
So for the libraries I visited in Kilifi, none of them were lending out books. So people could just come in, read the books. I think mostly it stems maybe with the policy regarding like, oh yeah, you're giving this person a books, like how, like the structure of like the book coming back. I think that's mostly in it, and maybe the funding, because I think they take time before like they receive the books. So they can lend out a book before they receive like another shipment. It may take a while. So the ones I visited, it was mostly just reading within the libraries.
Yeah, that's also true here. This library, our goal for this year is to launch our lending library. It's a lot. I think a factor might also be the way that tech changes so quickly for lending services. So it's very capex capital expenditure intensive to get the tech you need to make sure you can track the book. I think the issue of books not coming back, I think libraries everywhere have found a way to deal with that. Just order more copies. I think if a book's getting stolen, that's a wonderful thing. Steal it. not these ones. These ones keep them. But it's a great thing because it means that somebody has found value in it, right? They see this thing, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Me, as the author of The Havoc of Choice, you can steal all my books, but like that libraries have a solve for. I think the challenge is the tech, and that's what we're experiencing here. We need about $40,000 to convert this rich collection into a lending library, to get the electrical gates and the strips and all of that stuff, and that might be the case in a lot of the libraries we saw as well. So the capex is quite pricey, and very few are actually lending. I think maybe Panellists, do they? I don't think
they do. They do, but it's true. Majority of them they don't. But Panellists, when they lend out, tied to the 20 shillings a day situation. Yeah.
Okay, last question, please. Mo, sorry, can we take one from, then I'll make sure I find you. You can ask the question.
Hi everyone, morning. My name is Mo. I think for me, my question would be, the report is amazing. As when we began the research, just the inception phase on what Book Bunk wanted to do, I think for me now it's, where do you see this report landing in bridging the gap between policy and now just community? Like, how do we cascade that information? Let me give an example. Like, we have an organization in Uganda called Cross Cultural Foundation, and they do a lot of community work with libraries, with museums, and now they've been able, because of research, to embed that in their curriculum. So there's some sort of policy about what books kids read. So how do you see this report changing or affecting or influencing policies that now trickle down to schools, to the other libraries or community libraries?
Thank you, Mo. Mo from the British Council, one of our sponsors. Thank you. That's a very great question to end this session with, because another thing we found is that there are such great policies around libraries here, but they're not being used. And that's true for very, very, very many other areas of Kenya. So this research is coming out, or is being completed, at least our phase of it, at a very special time for Book Bunk, because we're asking ourselves, what does growth look like for us? As a joke, we've been saying libraries everywhere, but now we actually have to think about what that looks like, because we have a really strong concept of what it means to build like vibrant community libraries. And I think sometimes the best way to apply a policy is in practice. And so we're gonna apply it by trying to figure out how we can better network these libraries, even if it's informally, so we can see, can we share more? Can we share more together? Can we share resources? So maybe the gaps that exist, the big gaps that exist, can be plugged by just community sharing. Then we can assess the gaps, and hopefully policy can speak to that more eloquently, but it already does. I think it's just finding practical ways to make sure that policy gets translated into practice, and that's what we're going to do at Book Bunk. We want to begin to figure out what the infrastructure to build libraries everywhere is. We don't have to build them physically, but we've learned that our interventions are threefold. We work on the buildings, the collections, and the programs. And in this new iteration of our work, we're wondering, must we do all those three? Because we've learned from this research that not everyone needs all three. Some guys just need programs. Can we do programs at KNLS? Can we go here and just help them with a collection? Can we come here and do your building? Because then the work gets done faster and needs a lot less resource. But I think that the immediate step would be, how can we connect these libraries? And thankfully, everybody who we spoke to, is keen to see the output of the research and then continue the conversation. So we're here for it. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been our panel. Thank you for the honor of your attention. To our incredible speakers representing the research team. Thank you, Team Book Bunk, for doing this work, and enjoy the rest of your festival.